All right. Good morning or good afternoon, everyone, depending on where you are in Australia. And welcome also to all our international attendees as well to today's webinar, Protect Your Business, Cyber Liability and Legal Coverage Essentials. Now, cyber is a big topic that we get a lot of our clientele asking us to cover. So if you are one of those people, Christmas has come early. Welcome. My name is Joel Comerford. I'm part of Lawpath's team. I'm one of the consultants over here for legal and accounting, and I'm also your webinar host. It's great to have you all with us because this is obviously one of those topics that business owners often overlook until it's too late. And Australia is, as one of our speakers will touch on today, one of the worst countries for cybersecurity and breaches. So hopefully today you will gather some solid insight and you can future-proof your business if you are looking to register something new. Now, before we dive in, here's a little quick version of who we are for those of you who are new. Australia's leading legal and accounting platform for businesses. Lawpath have been around for 11 years in the market, helping Australians start, run, and grow confidently. Over 600,000 businesses supported in those 11 years, and more than $500 million saved and in legal and accounting fees through our services. And businesses using Lawpath have a 25% higher survival rate than the national average businesses. If you are interested in learning a little bit more about these statistics, you can go ahead and hop onto lawpath.com.au, where we have a ton of blogs and stats and information on how we've been able to help all these 600,000 plus businesses in the 11 years we've been around. Now, before we jump into the heavy stuff, I wanted to acknowledge something. We usually have two types of people attending each webinar, those who are kind of suffering from whatever the issue is, and then those who are interested in educating ourselves. So the first, I guess the first genre, or not genre, the first box some of you are in is the future proofing. So you're here because you want contingencies and clear processes and protection before anything goes wrong. I'd like to think that's the higher category. And then the second are those of you who have been stung by the cybersecurity breaches. And I speak to maybe 15 to 20 people per day who are suffering from this. So it is annoying that this webinar is long overdue, but we're finally here. So those kind of people have usually felt the pain of a breach, you've dealt with the stress of it, and you never want to repeat that experience. So those two categories have the same goal today, and that is to be educated and empowered on how to avoid any kind of mishaps moving forward. But also, if you know there are any legal, compliance, or tax obligations you need sorted before the end of 2026, if you want to start the new year off fresh, then please go ahead and throw a yes into the chat. I'd be more than happy to book a session with you either this week or sometime next week, and we can discuss a little bit about your business's circumstances, whether you're a sole trader, a partnership, or a company. If there's anything that's bothering you at this stage, any gray areas within your business, or if you have future business plans that require a little bit more specific attention, I'd be more than happy to go over that with you. We can go over the finer details and see if we can offer our assistance. Now, on to our speakers today. For those who have attended some of our webinars, you know Olivia Dalton, Liv, our head of legal over here at Lawpath. Liv brings over 10 years of legal experience, spanning both traditional law firms and Australia's fast-moving startup ecosystem. She began her career in litigation, giving her deep understanding of how poor process, unclear policies, and overlooked obligations can turn into serious business risks. Liv is known for helping entrepreneurs stay compliant, avoid costly mistakes, and build strong, scalable foundations. She understands both the legal hurdles and the real-world pressures business owners face every day. So thank you so much for joining us again today, Liv. And then we have a very, very special guest today, someone who I hope will leave a lasting impression on most of you. Her name is Skye Theodorou. She is a co-founder and CEO of Upcover, one of our business partnerships over here. Anyone who's interested after this call in relation to Upcover, go onto the platform, look at our partner offers, you will see some more information there. So Skye leads Upcover, which supports over 100,000 Australian businesses with simple, accessible cyber insurance solutions. With a background in law and cybersecurity research, she has hands-on experience with cyber events, incident response, and the tools that protect businesses when things go wrong. Together, Liv and Skye bring a perfect blend of legal, operational, and real-world risk expertise to today's session. Now, before we jump in, we will go over some of what we will be touching on. When a cyber incident becomes a legal obligation under the Privacy Act, what counts as notifiable data breach and what doesn't? The legal risks of handling a breach incorrectly, what cyber liability insurance actually protects you from, how AI-driven attacks are increasing risks, and most importantly, how to protect your business before a crisis hits. So we're hoping by the end of the session, you will walk away with a response to breaches the right way, how to avoid unnecessary fines and investigations, putting the right legal structural safeguards in place, and how to ensure your business has the support it needs before something goes wrong. Now, before we jump into the session, we will have a Q&A at the end. If you have a burning question, you can go ahead and throw it into the chat and we'll try to get through it throughout. Otherwise, if you're happy to wait, we will go ahead and answer everyone's questions at the end. And there will also be a recording of today's session as well as the slides that I will send out via email, as well as all of our partner offers, including Upcover and our wonderful Black Friday deals, which I will also go over later on today. So without further ado, thank you all for attending, and Liv, go ahead and take it away.
Thank you, Joel. Thanks for the very lovely introduction. And I'm very lucky today to have Skye joining me. Very excited to cover off, I guess, both ends of the spectrum, as Joel said. We've got people in two buckets, and I can see some familiar names in the chat already. So thanks for joining us again. We've got some real webinar loyalists here, which is really great to see. These webinars, we do our very best to cover off, I guess, all of those burning questions that you do have as starting your businesses or running your businesses. And this is probably one of our most requested topics. So let's get into it. And we're starting with the heavy stuff. So knowing your obligations before what we call a crisis, or the media love to call a crisis. We've all heard all of the different, more recent cybersecurity breaches from some of the big names in business. However, this doesn't preclude small and medium businesses from being vulnerable to having a non-compliance issue and having a data breach. And oftentimes we are a bit cash strapped. We are trying to, make ends meet with, slapping together some protections. So what we really need to get into today is knowing your specific obligations, knowing your business and where your risks are, and how to avoid, I guess, consequences that can really snowball. So knowing your obligations before a crisis, we're going to get into, there's quite a few checklists that are really helpful online for me to point you to. But the really key thing, and I think the key thing that comes up a lot with our clients is this middle one, acting fast. Oftentimes, these clients are waiting to speak to a lawyer because they're a bit nervous about something in particular that may or may not have happened. They want to speak to maybe a friend, or they've kind of got their head in the sand about something that may have leaked, or, a staff member's laptop may have been stolen and they don't know what to do for next steps. And what often happens is they get a bit frozen in time. So being well prepared for these breaches and knowing what constitutes a breach is super important and really plays a very big part in saving your reputational damage. Now, protecting your business and feeling confident in that is going to help you sleep at night. So that's where really Skye comes in, and Skye is going to dive into some real world examples of how Upcover have been able to assist. But what I'd like you to all think about is one example I often share with clients is some flooding that happened up in Lismore maybe 10 years ago. And look, poor old Lismore, it happens a lot. But there's one particular example that I'd like you all to think about because it's something that you can take forward to the rest of the presentation today. We've got two houses side by side in Lismore, and this is a true story. House number one is covered from a insurance perspective. So is house number two. They look the same and they've been affected by this exact same floodwater. Now, what often happens in floodwater, which I didn't realize, but I slowly learned, is that often floodwater is ingress. It's come into your home, but often floodwater causes the most damage when it's backwater and it's washing back out and it's draining itself. Now, house number one had backwater insurance. House number two did not. Both of them approached their insurers saying, I'd like to kick in my insurance policy. I've been covered for flood damage. And unfortunately, because house number two didn't read their fine print, they were not covered for the backwater damage that was created. So, this is a pretty good analogy that we can apply across business and any other, I guess, insurance related outcome that I'm sure many of you have come across already. But it's one to keep in mind because it shows the importance of being insured, but then it also shows the importance of reading and understanding and having a trusted partner, whether that be a broker or a liaison at your insurer, to help you understand exactly what you're covered for. So, we're here to talk about notifiable data breaches. So, this is really when a cyber incident becomes your obligation, not just an issue that you've got to sort out internally, but usually it's grown some legs and it's a cyber incident that's not only going to affect your business, but it may affect the wider public. Now, I've included this little extra tidbit, the best day of my life as a young lawyer. Back a very long time ago, when I was a young lawyer at a very traditional law firm, as you can imagine, there wasn't really a minute to have a break, and most people worked late at night every night. Our firm was actually attacked very, very early on in the new age of cyber incidents, and all of a sudden I'm working and my screen went black, and it stayed black for 2 days because our firm was being held ransom. It was very scary time for the firm. Us as employees didn't really know what to do, but it was the best day of my life as a young lawyer because I got to go home early and I actually couldn't work for 2 days. This is before the days of laptops, so I'm showing my age. Um, but there we go. It's, these cyber breaches, this is a law firm, a huge national law firm, ground to a halt for 3 days. And I never actually found out how the law firm untangled themselves from it. But as a young lawyer, it was pretty cool to get a couple of days off. I did suffer the next couple of days when I had double the work to do. So, what's a notifiable data breach? Now, I'm sure you understand that not every single incident that happens in your workplace is going to trigger a notifiable data breach. And it's a capitalized term because that's how the law interprets a notifiable data breach. Um, any Anyone out there, pop in the comments, know what the OAIC stands for. Can win a little prize if you guess it correctly. The OAIC. Don't all guess at once. The OAIC, Skye, you're not allowed to answer. Nice, Ram. That's right. The Office of the Australian Information Commissioner. Thanks, Rebecca. You're a close second. So all of the notifiable data breaches are governed by the OAIC. And at the end of the day, a notifiable data breach will need to go to them as soon as anything occurs. So what is a data breach? It's when personal information is accessed, disclosed, or lost without authorization. Now, that's fairly straightforward, and we'll get into some more of the nuances a little bit later on. Now, I'm sure you've seen or read or heard that most of these are actually attributable to human error most of the time. And what we're seeing in this day and age, and what a lot of our clients see, is those emails that you get that sound like they're from, your CEO or somebody that you know, or somebody that you've just had a meeting with at that time, and they've got all the details of that meeting right, and they've sent you a link to click on, and it's, hey, for further information, click here, or hey, could you please process this payment for me? Those types of emails, those phishing emails, are the number one question that we often are asked here at Lawpath. But that's not limited to just general cyber attacks, failures within your internal systems, or another one with human error is that accidental sharing. So, human beings, we make mistakes, but the best thing that we can do is be prepared. So, when does it actually become notifiable? So, it's when it's likely to cause serious harm to an individual or a business. So, serious harm is very comprehensively covered by this definition under the law. So, it's financial, emotional, reputational, and this is a reasonable test. The law loves saying a reasonable test. And the really tricky thing is you're a business owner. You are well versed and you know your business inside out, back to front, but you might not know whether something causes serious harm. And the second part of that test is whether you could have reasonably prevented that risk of harm. So when that threshold is met, and we'll get into a little bit more of that later, when it is met, you have to notify the OAIC and you must notify all affected individuals, and notification must occur as soon as practicable. Now, soon as practicable is a little bit open-ended, isn't it? It's a little bit open to interpretation. So, where I stand with this, and it's within 72 hours, where I stand with this, and what I always recommend to my clients is having a policy in place internally in your business. And you may have visited big businesses' websites where they have this type of information on display to the public, but small businesses don't often have that. Is having an internal cadence and I guess promise to each other as to when notification will occur. As soon as practicable, it's going to work in your favor as well if you were ever to be investigated or things or that investigation grew some legs. So going to the OAIC as quickly as possible, even if you are unsure, is the best bet rather than, I guess, stringing out and getting all the advice in the world. So I always recommend as quickly as possible. And if you're a business that is agile and can work quickly, within 24 hours is highly recommended. Okay, so when will it become notifiable? And now this table is a handy one, and I highly recommend revisiting these slides once they're sent to you by Joel afterwards. And these four criteria I would use every single time I'm assessing whether something has become notifiable for a client. This is set out by the Privacy Act. So if any of you enjoy reading legislation like me, you're more than welcome to go and have a look at the Privacy Act. But this table also gives you a pretty clear picture of the criteria, what it means, and what it will mean to you. So criteria number one is personal information involved. Now, names, emails, financial or sensitive data. This isn't limited to these categories either. Names is a little bit of it may not or become notifiable, it just names, if I'm honest. But anything that is, I guess, identifiable from there is certainly something that you should be ticking this box. Second criteria, unauthorized access and disclosure. So data's exposed, misdirected, or lost. This happens. We all know that this happens. It happens with small businesses, big businesses, and this will directly trigger a breach assessment internally for your business. So if you are in the process of writing a policy or you're thinking about putting in a policy, this item will automatically trigger a breach assessment in your data breach policy. Now, likely to cause serious harm. I've capitalized this one as the key because this is the threshold for reporting to the OAIC. So it's going to cause harm to that one person or the multiple people whose emails, financial data, etc., has been exposed. Now, mitigation is not sufficient. So trying to fix it and trying to patch it up with a band-aid is not the answer. So you can't reasonably reduce the harm is really what the law says. And the way that we interpret that is that, trying to cover it up essentially is not the answer. Now, I've put a little example here. What about an employee, or let's call them an ex-employee, downloads a customer database to their personal USB before resigning? This happens. It's happened to a client of mine who was a real estate agent because, as you know, that book of clients is their gold mine. And they later to discover that that person was attempting to sell the data to a competitor. Would we say this one's notifiable? I'd like you all to have a think as we continue on into the next slide. I'm driving the slides, by the way. I'm not the best driver. Okay. Common misconceptions about notifiable data breaches. So this is what I just touched on before. If we fix it quickly, we don't have to report it. This is probably the most common thing that we see pop up a lot. We've had some information stolen about our client, but we covered it up and we've asked them to delete it, etc. And it was very much contained. Ultimately, this is not an excuse and it's not a way out. This is another one. Only big companies need to worry. Now, the good news is we've got around 100, maybe more attendees today. And most of you are from that small and medium business space. So the good thing is you haven't been tricked by this misconception, because if you are in that small and medium space, you are not under any illusions that you also need to worry about this. So small and medium businesses are often increasingly targeted because they have less protections involved, and they have less, I guess, ability to go after or pursue any of these breaches. So that's why we're here, and we're going to be helping you as much as possible. And human error, we've touched on this already. As I said, it's the most common reportable breach, and it happens all the time. There's nothing we can do besides fully equip and train our staff to be alert to these items and be alert to phishing emails and these types of things in real time. And we'll know when something serious happens. Now, you're running a business, you're busy actually going out to the market and making money. You may not be across everything that's happening day to day. And what you want to be able to do is trust your staff. If you've got somebody that's, in charge of your software engineering or your IT security, you want to have the relationship with them that they are going to come to you straight away with anything serious or anything that they are suspicious of. Because at the end of the day, you don't want staff, I guess, ultimately scared to approach you as the founder or the owner of the business, because they're a bit nervous to tell you that something might have gone wrong or they might have made a mistake. So, as I said, some can go unnoticed, but what we do find is in this space, people do get afraid and people do get nervous about coming forward and explaining that, they may have made an error. So have a think about how your business is structured and how open communication is in that space for you guys, and whether you need to make any changes. And if you want to have a little chat about how things do run and how maybe you would like them to run, we're more than happy to have a further conversation with you down the track with one of our lawyers. So on that note, having a bit of a self-assessment and having a bit of a reflection on your own situation and your own business. Asking yourself these questions is a certain way of ensuring that you are capturing anything that is notifiable. Now, this last one here, has a 30-day assessment window begun? Now, you must assess and decide within 30 days under the Privacy Act. As I said, there's certain obligations under the OAIC and there's certain obligations under the Privacy Act. So 30 days is what the Privacy Act dictates for you to be compliant. Now, a lot of this is sounding like the responsibility is all on you, and at most of the time it is. But I'd like you to have a think about whether you do have some coverage, or you're thinking about getting some coverage for some cybersecurity insurance. And I'll walk you through an example. This isn't my client, but this is a case that I'm across in the private healthcare space. Now, this case only happened very recently in the last couple of years, and the cyber attack was extremely sophisticated. This company had spent a fortune on, future-proofing everything from a cybersecurity level. However, it was a human error issue, and patient information was accessed and stolen and actually being held at ransom and that ransom was continuing to tick up. Not meaning to scare you, but it's just a good illustration of how that insurance can assist. So the great news is this particular private healthcare client was insured, and they were offered immediate IT support to come in and fix it. They were offered a forensic specialist to come in and analyze what had happened, and they had some help with their crisis communications. This is all covered by their insurance policy. So it's really helpful to see that there are ways to not feel alone in this space, because at the end of the day, you've got legal assistance, you've got yourself as a business owner and knowing your business really well. However, there's that third layer of protection that is the critical one, and ensuring that you do have a trusted insurance partner in this space. So, how am I going for time? I'm going okay. Legal risks and non-compliance. What actually does happen, and what have we seen happen? So, where businesses can go wrong, as I've already touched on, delaying the reporting. That can also increase any sort of penalty that a court may impose as a result of you being sued for some sort of data breach. They will always look to you coming to the situation with what we call clean hands and best intentions, and you've been cooperative from the start. As opposed to the opposite, where you've sort of dragged your feet a little because you were scared or nervous, and that can increase the scrutiny and sometimes media scrutiny and often the penalties that are imposed. Failure to keep breach assessments, timelines, and internal notes. Now, this is something that probably is fairly low down on people's lists, but my recommendation is it always needs to be lifted up. So, in terms of keeping breach assessments and keeping comprehensive records of these, especially, you don't want staff coming and going and not being across certain actions taken as a result of certain breaches and things like that. These should be stored in an accessible internal database and all governed by how your internal data breach policy has told them to report. And a response plan. So this should all be built into your data breach policy. And if you don't have one, highly recommend speaking to a lawyer or having a look on Lawpath for some of our templated versions. Because without one, there is no response plan and you're actually winging it. You're making it up as you go. And the worst thing that can happen is responding one way for one data breach and responding a different way for a second data breach. Because at the end of the day, if you were ever in a courtroom or you were ever asked to, really be investigated, all of this information is going to come to the fore. Outdated or missing policies. Now, if you've been on one of my webinars before, what I always recommend doing is putting a calendar invite into your calendar every 6 months to double check your policies. Now, that includes your employment contracts and things like that. But having a diary entry in there will ensure that that cadence is never missed. Having it in the back of your mind, that's something that you're going to think about every night before you go to sleep. But if you've got a diary entry in there that says, okay, well, every November I review my contracts, that's going to increase your accountability. And it's also going to help you perhaps delegate that to somebody internally into the team and things like that. But it's helping you tick that box from a business perspective.
Hey, Liv, just real
Yeah.
quick. Leanne's asked, what if you become aware that the contracted provider, for example, booking service, has the notifiable data breach?
Oh, sorry. I'm just trying to have a look at the questions. They're not popping up for me anymore. Oh, here we go. That a contracted provider has a notifiable data breach. Okay, so Leanne, I'm guessing that this is you've entered a contract in with another provider. They're a booking service, and they've had a notifiable data breach. I'm assuming that it's somebody else that's had. Yeah, okay. So there's no obligation on you as such. However, it is, it's a good person test at the end of the day. So in this case, what I would always recommend doing is letting them know that potentially they may have had a data breach because they may be unaware. And if they haven't, if that you have made them aware and they haven't done anything about it, I highly recommend reporting that if it's a concern for you. It's a good question. Okay, so in terms of your legal obligations, and I'm very conscious, I'm ready for Skye's ready and waiting to launch into her slides. But what I'd just encourage you all to do is take a look at this table and ensure that any policy and any format internally that you're going to be following, the first step is you're conducting that formal assessment internally within 30 days. So this is required, and you need to be able to prove that you have assessed the breach internally and the outcome that you have determined. As part of that assessment, you're determining whether that serious harms occurred. You've notified affected individuals, and notifying them as soon as practicable. You don't need to provide them with the exact outcome. You just need to let them know that this has occurred. Now, unfortunately, this has probably happened to far too many of us by now, but you've probably got an email once or a text saying that your data may have been part of a data breach. And oftentimes it takes a little while, but you do get an outcome or you do receive some more communication as to whether your data was actually affected and what the outcome was. So there's a difference between notifying and giving them the exact, I guess, course of action, but you need to do both. So notifying them upfront as quickly as possible is highly recommended. And it helps, I guess, it helps reputationally as a business, and helps with that trust factor, because if it is eroded by the breach, you're doing your utmost to try and, I guess, repair it. Notifying the OAIC. Now, with Joel's slides, I will send you a link to where you would notify the OAIC. It's usually a statement or an online form, and keeping those written records. So lawyers love written records, but I encourage you guys as business owners to love them too. So I'm a bit conscious of time, and I want to make sure that Skye's got plenty of time to chat to you guys. So this is my final slide here, and it's a risk versus impact. What's high risk and what's considered low risk. So having a look at these examples here, let's look at a minor incident which we would consider low risk. So a misdirected email. We've all done it. We've all sent an email with some information. Perhaps you've sent it to the wrong person. It's often not notifiable, but it still should be recorded internally in your business as best practice. And if it is occurring on a regular basis, I highly recommend putting in some training with your team to understand exactly how this is occurring on a regular basis. And if it does happen, the best course of action is always contacting that person that's received the wrong information and letting them know that they were not the intended recipient, and to confirm that they've deleted it. Now, a high risk breach, credentials, personal data, all the bad stuff. Essentially, any time that this occurs, it is notifiable, and follow your process and follow what's set out in your data breach policy. However, more often than not, you are notifying the OAIC and the affected individuals every time. As I said, you want to be avoiding penalties, and you want to be showing that you are doing your utmost as a business to try and contain it as best you can. Now, I'm going to kick over to Skye, and I'll see you all a little bit later towards the end for the Q&A. Thanks, Skye.
Thanks, Olivia. Hi, everyone. And Olivia's going to be a legend and help me keep on track with my slides. So I'm Skye. I'm the co-founder CEO of Upcover. I'm a bit of a bush lawyer. Never went to top tier and went to private practice, but I'm a bit of a geek, and I'm really passionate about business owners, being a business owner myself, but also having grown up with a lot of family-run businesses around me. And I'm just very, very focused on assisting and enabling business owners to be able to get on with it and to get as much information in your hands as possible. And that's why I built Upcover. So I have done a bit of research on this piece, and it has been a little while, but this is a definition that I built out for a thesis that I did, that I presented to Canberra when Malcolm Turnbull was actually the Minister for Communications. And the WannaCry incidents of those really major ransomware events happened about, I would say, like 8 years ago. It is a lot of things, cybersecurity, and it keeps changing every year. And I think what I'm going to do is not just talk about cyber insurance, but also cybersecurity risks and what they are. And if anyone has a question, I'll try and speedily get through stuff, and then we can answer as many questions as you guys might have. But you might know about malware, you might know about ransomware events, but this is kind of increasing at a dramatic rate. Something Olivia mentioned about SMEs and small businesses and why they might be targeted. What's becoming more and more apparent, and was even when I did my original research and studies with the Small Business Commissioner's Office and the Australian Small Business Family Enterprise Ombudsman, was that SMEs get targeted and have always been targeted and targeted at a great rate. This data, like at the very bottom, is a stat of 60% of incidents are made against SMEs. That's from 2015. That's quite old data. That still continues to be true. The thing that is very true as well is that they also know, the cyber criminals, how much you're willing to pay to get on with things and just keep going. And I think that that really is something that I'm going to spend a bit of time talking to you more about how sophisticated this is becoming. Thanks, Olivia. So this is two different like graphs or stats that might give you a bit of an insight to how much things have changed and the landscape does change. The left-hand side in that infographic is from my data and my report that I published with the government. And you can see the cost of cyber insurance and the cost for Australians as well. But you can also see here this statistic about a lot of incidents were occurring, and this is just for healthcare, but just specifically, a lot of incidents are occurring because of error, human error, as Olivia said. If you look at the right-hand side, and this is the most recent data from CrowdStrike from 2025 and Cybersecurity Ventures, the cost has risen absolutely and utterly enormously. It is much more than we ever anticipated. If we go back to when my data was first run and I first built this research for SMEs, which was the first time I'd seen it done. And now it's costing about 10.5 trillion annually. And you can see the different sectors that might be and mostly targeted when it comes to businesses specifically. And this is, you can see it's a lot of breadth in terms of businesses. Health is definitely a focus as well. And then the frequency of this and the cost. So between $60,000 and $200,000, and that's Australian statistics and AUD, everyone, in terms of the true cost of an event. Just to give you guys some more context around how and when and the frequency and size, we can keep going. This is amazing, amazing data, but also a little scary. So I'm sorry if I'm frightening anyone. AI, and we're talking about that a little bit, but it's really becoming a bit of a force multiplier for cyber criminals. It's shortening their learning curve, expanding their development cycle, and what is good is they're still iterative like we all are with AI. But this kind of learning curve and how quickly they can deploy will mean that we just need to be ever vigilant and be taking this a little bit seriously. Their access to LLMs, which are large language models, is also increasing. So there's a lot of data and maybe your credentials involved in some of this. And the most interesting thing of all that I think was in this report this year for CrowdStrike is that they're becoming enterprise-like. It's kind of like, imagine mafia bosses starting to build networks where they work and share information, work together, share resources to get a specific outcome. This is very different to the kind of warfare and guerrilla type tactics that we're very much used to when we think about cybersecurity events and someone, in some random country with a laptop and some Wi-Fi connection doing something. It is becoming a very strong and powerful tool. Looking at some of the statistics that I've got here, you can see that one of the reported incidents in this report actually showed that the drop rate of intrusion into a system dropped from 48 minutes to seconds, less than a minute, 51 seconds. Everyone knows the annoying English guy that calls you about some wine thing. I don't know if everyone on this call has gotten this, but phishing, so voice phishing attacks, including some of them to Mandarin, so focused on people that are immigrants in Australia, are increasing at a really great rate as well. And then I would say you can see broker advertisements. This is one thing, this is really a little bit new, is that there's a whole new industry that's been built out of this where there are people that are brokering, identifying and getting access to your credentials and your data or your customers' data, and then giving that to the larger enterprises for them to do with what they will. And the number of adversaries has grown at a great rate too. A lot of countries in Southeast Asia, Central Asia, and China, obviously, and Russia. And that's a lot of those stats. Now, when it comes to cybersecurity and cyber insurance, it's really one tool, but the things that when we speak to a business, regardless of their level and size, is these are the things that are very relevant. And the first is your data. What kind of data are you storing? Do you hold of your customers? Do you store or hold only reasonable data, like things that are necessary and needed for the purpose of running your business? Do you store any health information, which is PHI? So PII is personally identifiable information. Does anyone know what PCI or PHI is? Being Olivia did a little pop quiz earlier. So payment card information and health information as well. Yeah, exactly. So the one really important thing to know about is if you have PHI and you're actually in the medical industry or allied health professional industry, you have an obligation to report if you have an incident straight up and off the bat. On the OAIC, there is at the moment a revenue threshold of $3 million. If your revenue is below $3 million, you may not need to report the incident if it doesn't involve PHI. This, however, is changing, and the timeline I just checked is imminent, that they're going to be removing the SME $3 million revenue requirement. So it's something that you should be conscious of. I've also just read that since I did my research and worked in government, and Olivia, correct me if I'm wrong, but there's also a requirement for you to report ransomware and extortion attempts, which is new information to me. So it's something that you would definitely picking up the phone and speaking to a lawyer to make sure that you're protecting yourself is really, really important. So that's data. Activities. What does your business do? Does your business do something that may be considered a bit high risk? Do you know how you're using your data on a day-to-day basis? Are you using AI? Are you using software services or agent providers, technology agencies that you understand your supply chain, their technology environments, your bookkeeper, for example, Leanne? Some of these are more high risk than others, particularly if you're an AI business or using AI, making sure that you're using closed LLMs and not using open data or storing your customers' information in that way and using those open systems is crucial. Not saying don't use it, just be very careful and make sure that you check. You could even ask the tool if it's safe and if it's going to be sharing that data if you share it publicly, just so that you're quite conscious about what you're doing and how you're using that customer's data while you're using these new and changing tools. The location of data and how you store this is also integral. If you're an Australian business with Australian services, keeping all of that local is pretty crucial and important. If you have global customers, it can trip all these different jurisdictions, particularly in the US, Singapore, and in the European Union, where there are timelines to how quickly you have to report an incident, like 72 hours or shorter, depending on the state in the US. And then tooling. So things that you can use, and do you have them in your toolbox to check your third parties or your supply chains to ensure that they have cyber insurance, for example, Leanne, or to check whether or not they actually do two checks on payments when it comes to supply chain or making payments if someone's changing bank account details, and third party risk assessments. And then cybercrime cover. I can talk about that when I talk about insurance coverage. This is what an insurance policy is. So to talk through what is insurance, does it actually protect me? Am I the house that Olivia gave you an example of that's on the left or the right that has the cover? Look, it is actually really tricky. And I personally have an opinion as a broker that's licensed, that I love building and underwriting and insurance products, and I have a passion for it. But it is tricky, and cyber insurance is not standardized. Where Olivia referred to flood insurance and that wording, and that is meant to be standardized and has been in Australia for some time, it is not at all. So comparing one product to another can be really, really difficult. The thing that I would say is an easy thing to try and help you resolve, though, is to be careful about the proposal form, which is the questionnaire, if you are getting cyber insurance or you have it currently, that you're filling. There is one form in particular that if anyone has insurance currently may know, and is extremely complicated, and it is impossible for even me or my CTO to answer every question confidently, and they are largely not relevant. Sometimes those tools and forms can be used in a way that can be construed against you if you disclose incorrectly about having certain things or controls in place if you do have an incident. That's why I don't like them. We have cyber insurance that's available on our platform, and it's very simply exercised. So it's something that you should keep in mind when you're filling out those prop forms and questionnaires, everyone. When it comes to a product, all products are the same, though, in a couple ways. So rather than all those definitions and the coverage limits and the sublimits, etc., there's first-party cover and there is third-party cover, and then there is cybercrime cover. That is how every cyber insurance product is built. The first-party cover is all about actual insurance coverage for the costs that you need to incur straight away the moment you call Lawpath about an incident and you're concerned and you need to respond to potentially investigate, appoint a forensic accountant, contact and respond to the ransomware provider, for example, and negotiate on that ransom. You have to use the forensic cybersecurity consultants to identify the cause of the intrusion and to do reporting on this. You also need to engage lawyers to help you report to the OAIC if you have to, and also to help you write the communication of the notifiable incident to your customers that have been affected and give them updates. You could even incur costs about PR management if you're really concerned about your PR, if you've got a wonderful brand in market or a really particular customer base. They all cost you start incurring from day one. And as you can see from the estimates of 60,000 to 200,000, even for an SME, they can be quite expensive straight away. There are, in a lot of insurance products, vendor panels that can respond 24/7, and they're inside your insurance policy. So you can go into that and have a look and contact them about it. You can also potentially contact your broker and give them a call. Like if you've got my number, you just call. And a couple of people have called us recently about things that have occurred. The second is third-party cover. So that's first party, and that's really, really important. Like there's separate limits for ransomware, cybercrime itself, and I'll talk more about cybercrime in a little bit. You should never pay a ransomware. Yeah. So third party costs is all about if someone decides to sue you or someone's because they believe, and that could be someone you're contracting with as a third party and company and business that you work with. It could also be your customer or number of customers, and they decide to sue you. So it's defense costs and settlement costs in relation to the harm that you caused others because of this cybersecurity incident. And then there is cybercrime cover, which is all about, the cost of paying a ransomware, the covering that specifically, the cost of paying if there's an invoice factoring or social engineering fraud, which is someone entering your bank account systems or your emails and invoicing, changing your invoices, and then you paying to the wrong account, for example. That is all considered cybercrime. The one thing on cybercrime is that you should be considering is if you're buying the cheapest possible product for insurance for cyber out there, you may not have it in there. So you should ask for it to be included. If you're very cost conscious, you should consider getting a quote for it because it can be a little bit more expensive, but not hugely depending on your industry. You need to have certain controls in place to ensure that it's not too crazily expensive and you can still access that cybercrime coverage. But a lot of incidents for SMEs are due to cybercrime. So it's something to really seriously consider taking out. It is also important to think about whether or not the insurance product that you have or you're accessing has a combined limit for cybercrime, or whether or not there's actually separate limits, which means you're even more protected in a 12-month period if multiple events happen. I hope that makes sense. That's a good question, Mike. Cool. So ways that you can protect yourself really simply and easily. Multi-factor authentication, LastPass or NordPass password vaults, and rolling that out for your entire enterprise, including shared passwords for your, shared users and logins for like your support emails or complaints, etc., for your handling. You really, really should be adopting MFA on every single tool that you possibly can apply it to if you haven't already. On your own systems and business and platform, you could implement like an OTP just to do a secondary check, even when people come back and they're an existing customer, just to ensure that it's not being maliciously used or accessed. And then what you can also do is do a cybersecurity risk assessment and scan. Sometimes this costs a little bit. You have to work with an MSSP, a managed cybersecurity provider. But Coalition is a partner of ours, and they're an insurance technology business. All they do is cybersecurity insurance, and they operate in the US. In 4 years of operations, they have actually surpassed Chubb Insurance, which is the #1 cybersecurity insurance provider globally. And they've actually had a reduction in claims costs year on year by 4%. Some of their tools and teams, they're like half engineers and cybersecurity response teams, and they are readily available. And the thing that is most amazing about this tool is that their insurance does consider and cost in your surface scanning of 40,000 different factors when they actually produce the price. That's something that we have available at Upcover today. We've the only insurance business in Australia that's been given access to be able to provide that to businesses straight away at a click of a button. So you guys can access that. It's the insurance product I use. I recommend other founders take it out as well. For those that have had a cybersecurity incident recently, they've had this product and the response team and handling has been exceptional. Yeah, so the cybersecurity risk assessment is exceptional. You can use it for yourself to identify how you fare and your tech systems and tools fare in your industry, and also understand it's about a 40-page document. It's generated really quickly, so you can do that with us, and it's free. And it will just give you more knowledge, and you can run it as many times as you need. I also run it at least weekly, I think, at the moment, on a few of my really integrated supply chain partners where I'm working with them on technology. There you go. So this is who else you can use in your toolbox if you're not thinking about, a typical MSSP, or even, if you've got your own CISO, Chief Information Security Officer, you could work with other brands. We do everything in-house at the moment internally. We don't have a CISO at Upcover, but it is something you can consider. The 24/7 monitoring tools and training is something that's really important, something Olivia mentioned. It's something that's difficult, though, to implement as an SME. We use Vanta, and we're doing that to get our equivalent MIC ISO, or we're getting to a SOC 2 accreditation at the moment. You can also work with CrowdStrike and Coalition as well to do and utilize a bunch of tools that they have. Some of them are paid and some of them are free. And then the insurance and response teams are kind of what I referred to. Inside cybersecurity insurance products, there are vendor panels and response teams that are available. They are, as I said, 24/7. And what they do is they effectively respond straight away to a point. Some of that might be at your cost if they're not sure if there's coverage under the policy, but it's still something that you can access. With Coalition as well, you can also speak to their security teams about incidents and events that occur. Yeah, great. So go ahead, guys. If you have any questions about your own business, specifically want to unpack it, want us to review an insurance product, whether it's cyber or something else, our team will dive in and assist. We have about 8 people in our Upcover specialty team that can do tasks like that and assist. If you'd like to just hop online and get a quote, you can do that too. But please feel free to get your cybersecurity risk assessment. And we're really happy to do anything that we can to assist.
That was awesome, Skye. Thank you so much. I learnt a lot as well. So, just those details there down the bottom for everyone, if they would like to get in touch with anyone from Upcover. Skye, you've included your own personal email there. Nice touch.
Yeah, I know. So I probably have about 100 customers that have my mobile number. So I just if you have a cyber incident or something hairy happens when you have a claim, I spent half my career in insurance working in claims too. It's just helpful to have someone to call.
Cool. Thank you, Skye. I'm just having a quick look at Phil's question. We are getting close to time, but thank you, Phil. Feel free to start flooding us with a couple of questions while we've got the chance. I know Skye and I both have a hard stop at 1, and you've all got businesses to run. But Phil, never a stupid question. Do you cover all types of businesses or law companies? Phil, I think that one might have been directed for Skye. Just double checking.
Yeah. So all types of businesses. So we started our platform on upcover.com 3 or 4 years ago, and we've served over 100,000 businesses with quotes. It's like old data at this point, and it's been fantastic. Where we can't assist on upcover.com, we will assist. So whether it's a crypto exchange, Web3 business, AI technology, or a beautiful side hustle that you've got going on, or a business that's tried and true in Pilates or motor mechanic, we can assist.
Cool. Thanks, Phil. That was a good question. And we operate in a very similar way at Lawpath. If you do have a legal or accounting or a tax question, ask us. More than likely, we will be able to assist, but we will always send you in the right direction, making sure that you do have someone to ask the question, whether that be us or a trusted partner.
Yeah, that's right, Olivia. So we have a partnership with Lawpath. So if you end up, you've got a bunch of questions and a lot of those are legal, you go to Lawpath, and if some of them are insurance related, they can send it on to us. So don't worry about that. um, Cyber training platforms to support staff. We're using Vanta, Mike. I have worked with a couple of MSSPs, and I just am such a geek that I don't remember. I don't maybe I needed more control, or I just didn't want to just a template approach. I really want to dive in. But Vanta has been really good. Their training tools are really good as well. And then Coalition, we're unpacking some security training with them as well. So both have been really good partners for us so far. And then Mike, you had a question about ISO. ISO, if you're a really high risk business, it can certainly, and you can use it if you've got a proactive insurance broker and partner to try and reduce your premiums. But the algorithms are not built to identify for that. Not many people have ISO. Hopefully that helps you, Mike.
Thanks, Skye. I'm just going to throw back to Joel while we've got a couple of minutes. And then if we've got some time left over, we can answer any more questions. Over to you, Joel.
Thank you so much, guys. Before we move into the questions, I just wanted to take a moment to thank you to incredible people, Olivia and Skye, for bringing so much clarity to what can feel like a really overwhelming topic. Olivia walked us through what actually turns a cyber incident into a legal obligation, and how something as small as a misdirected email can escalate into fines, investigations, reputational damage, and weeks of disruptions if it's not handled properly. And Skye showed us just how quickly cybercrime is evolving. Attacks are happening every few minutes. They're hitting a small business. They're hitting small businesses the hardest, and the cost of doing nothing is skyrocketing year after year. So what we've learned today is simple. Your business doesn't need to be big to be targeted. It just needs to be online. And when something goes wrong, it's not just a technical problem, guys. It becomes a legal and financial problem too. And so where do we fit in the grand scheme of things, as opposed to Upcover as well? Well, this is exactly why Lawpath was built. It's why our plans were designed, because when something feels uncertain, when you're not sure if a breach is notifiable, when the ATO sends you something you don't understand, when a contract looks off, or when you simply don't know what you don't know, you deserve an expert to pick up the phone whenever you need, listen, and walk you through the next steps without charging you 400 plus per hour, for those of you who have had experience with legal and accounting in the past, especially in relation to the legal. So real quick, guys, I'll break it down because I know we're very strapped for time. We have our Black Friday deals going on at the moment. We have our legal advice plan, accounting, tax, virtual office, and essentials. The essentials plan gives you access to our entire document library. Our accounting advice plan gives you unlimited calls and chats with a qualified accountant. You get clarity on tax, payroll, bookkeeping, and compliance. Perfect when you need to have a questions answered right then and there, not in 2 or 3 weeks' time when your accountant's inundated with work and you have to wait. Our tax plan, it's your BAS, it's your tax returns, it's your year-on-year financials done for you, your obligations met, your risks reduced, your time protected. And our legal advice plan, where you could be speaking to someone like Liv, it's unlimited 30-minute calls. You get contracts reviewed, you get business advice, future movements, past discrepancies, employment, commercial, HR, privacy, intellectual property, property, intellectual property and property, anything you could likely imagine, we pretty much covered on these plans. They are 12-month contracts. You can sign up via annually or quarterly, and you can have complete access instantly. Now, a lot of people may be looking forward towards the Christmas period where you are going to be taking breaks. But what we've found in the last couple of years is that a lot of you entrepreneurs, you small businesses, you aren't taking breaks over the Christmas period. So that means if you are interested in getting everything done before 2026 and then leading into 2026 with a strong chip on your shoulder and a plan, an actual tax and legal plan for your business, then December's a great time because everyone's taking off. It means more room for you to get more consultations with our lawyers and accountants and not have to wait a day or two, which is really cool. So if you want to get as much done beforehand, please, by all means, go ahead and let me know. I'd be more than happy to have a chat with anyone after this webinar or later on in the week. If you just put yes in the chat, I'll take your information. We can hop on a demo. If you want to learn a little bit more about Lawpath and you want an actual free platform demo, I can show you how to create contracts, how to book compliance. We can learn a little bit more about your business's runnings, and certainly happy to have a free chat with you there. Just real quick, the most popular plans we have at the moment is our document library, our legal and accounting. That's going for $2,858 at this time. Or if you're someone who wants everything in one spot, you don't want to have to go here for tax, here for legal, here for accounting, you can get our complete compliance package, which also grants you $100 gift voucher for a Black Friday treat. That's $5,162. That pays for your entire compliance document library, legal advice, accounting, and tax for 12 months. Perfect. All right. Well, look, guys, I'll throw it back over to you for questions. But yes, we will be sending out an email afterwards with all of the slides, the webinar from today, the actual physical video that you can see, all of our products and pricing, as well as our products, Upcover's information and compliance with that. Cheers.
Thanks, Joel. Look, I think we might have to drop. We've got a couple of meetings, but thank you everyone so much for attending, and thank you so much for joining us, Skye. You were so insightful.
Oh, thank you, Olivia. It was an absolute pleasure and anytime privileged to be with you and Joel, honestly. Thanks, guys.
No worries. Thanks everyone for attending, and we hope to hear from you.
Bye, everyone.
See you later.
Thank you so much, guys. Have a good afternoon. Thanks, Liv. Thanks, Scott.